Hi everyone, Sandy here. I'm excited to share with you my Tombstone box that I designed for Country Craft Creations using Authentique's Nightfall paper collection. I originally designed this about 3 or 4 years ago for myself and gave it to my daughter, and always intended to do a tutorial but never got around to doing it. So here it is in the newer, improved version, and so I'm excited to share with you how to make this box. It's a great desktop or tabletop decoration, and later on I will have a tutorial on a little mini album that goes inside. So let's get started. I have here the basic supplies that I'm going to use to create this Tombstone box. All of this is from Country Craft Creations, and you can order yours from countrycraftcreations.com. You're going to want the Art Glitter Designer glue that dries clear. You're going to need some 3/8 inch score tape. You'll also want this Nouveau really pretty platinum silver embellishment mousse. That's how we're going to make the granite of our tombstone. And then you'll need a pack of the artisan cardstock from Country Craft Creations. It's a real pretty color. I have the whole pack. I'm not going to use all of that, of course, for this tombstone box, but I will use it on the little album. You'll probably need about 4 sheets for this. Then you'll also need one collection of the Nightfall from Authentique. This comes with 2 sheets of each pattern, double-sided. Of course, we're not going to use it all for the tombstone box, but we will use it for the album. And then I hope to do another third project using the paper, whatever's left, maybe a card or a card set or something. You will need chipboard. You can also order this from countrycraftcreations.com. This is the 8.5 by 11, but actually you would probably need at least 3 of the 8.5 by 11 or 2 of the 12 by 12 size of chipboard. So go ahead and cut your chipboard. I have the measurements here for you. You can pause the video and jot those down. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. I have already pre-cut mine. So I have one that I have cut down to 6 inch by 8 inch. This is the back of the box. And then I have one that's 6 1/4 inch by 8 1/4 inch for the door. 3 that are 2 3/4 inch by 7 for the base. You need the sides, which are 2 at 6 inch by 1.5. And then you're going to need one for the top, and this is really important that you cut this out correctly. This is 7 3/4 inches by 1.5. You'll notice that you want the length, the 7 3/4 inch, to bend. Only one direction will bend. So when you cut it out, make sure that you cut it so that the long ways bends. This is what's going to do our curve. Next, you need a piece of white paper. I'm using a piece of heavy white cardstock to make a template for the shape of our tombstone. So this is 8.5 by 11, and I have cut it down to the 6 inch by 8 inch size, and I am folding it in half lengthwise, and I'm going to go ahead and score that fold so that it lays down good. And now we're just going to cut the top here to make the shape of the tombstone. So grab your big scissors, and from the fold I'm going to start at the very tip of the fold and just make a slight curve cut. This will determine the shape of your tombstone. And this is a template that we're going to use to cut the door and the back of the tombstone out. So first I have here the 6 inch by 8 inch. I'm going to lay this template down. I'm going to take a Sharpie marker, and I'm just going to trace the shape right here on my chipboard. Now you can cut this out with a craft knife if you're really good at it. I'm not so great at craft knife, so the Tim Holtz scissors will cut it out just fine. Here I am tracing the pattern on the top edge of the door. I'm going to mark this as the door. You notice that when I marked it that it had a little bit of extra space on each side and the bottom. So this one I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. I know this one's off camera just a little bit. I'll show you the other piece in just a second, but I'm just following the marked lines and using my big scissors to cut that chipboard out. So here I'm going to mark this door so I don't get my pieces mixed up. This one's just slightly bigger. You need that to cover the opening of the tombstone. So here I'm going to cut out the back section of the box. Just cut right along the marked line. And these should come out pretty even this way. Again, the door one will be just slightly bigger in length and in width than the box space. So when you line those up, you'll see that. This project does use the construction hinges. The 1 inch wide by 12 inches is what I start out with. You may have a favorite way of making your hinges. I do best if I just take my 12 by 12 inch piece of cardstock and cut it into 1 inch strips. I start by moving it over, cutting at 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a countdown, isn't it? So here I am just cutting these out into 1 inch strips. Once you have your hinge strips cut, go ahead and put them into your scoreboard and score in half at 1/2 inch. So each one will be scored at 1/2 inch. Now you can go ahead and leave yours all the 12-inch length and cut them as you need them. I will cut some of these down into 6-inch long pieces. I'm trying to think. I'm going to need for the base 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 that are 6 inches, probably more than that, and I think one will need to be about 6 1/8 of an inch, possibly 2 of those at 6 1/8. So you can wait and cut these as you need them in the assembly of the box. So go ahead and score all of these, and then start adding your score tape. You will only add score tape to one side of these hinges, but you'll want the 3/8 inch on each half. So you'll see that later where you add the score tape on one side. It doesn't matter which side, but you only want you want 3/8 tape on each half of the one side. Now I'm going to go ahead and add score tape to one side, putting 3/8 inch on each half of the hinge, on each 1/2 inch section on one side only. You'll notice that I did cut some of them down to 6 inches. You can do that if you want. Start out with maybe 6, cut down to 6 each of the 6-inch length. Save a lot of your 1 inch to your 12-inch, I mean, to use to cut down as you need it. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. I am applying the score tape to all of the hinge pieces in the same manner. Okay, so let's start assembling this box base. I'm just taking my scissors and kind of trimming off, rounding off that little point there if you have one on the top. I want it really rounded. So take your 2 6-inch by 1.5 inch chipboard pieces for the sides and lay them on each side of the back base piece of with the curved top. Take a 6-inch hinge, pull the tape backing off on one half side, and you're going to line this up, put the chipboard right up against the fold line and burnish that down. Go ahead and put another one on the other side. In the same way, you're just going to line it up into the fold line. With the shape of this box, I prefer to wrap and assemble boxes, but with the shape of this one, you pretty much have to use the construction hinges to do this. So now peel the backing off the other side of the hinge. Take one of your sides and stand it up into the fold line of the hinge. Make sure it's even on both ends. Get it in there really tight and then fold that hinge down onto it. So that makes the side there. Now this box will be open on the front because we're going to add a door that opens, that swings open. So go ahead and put this side in. Okay, so there's the basic shape of the box, of the Tombstone box. We will reinforce this on the inside here. So you're going to reverse the fold of your hinge so that the tape is going to be on the outside now. I'll do that on 2 of those. So these are 6-inch also. If you haven't already cut yours, go ahead and cut your hinge pieces. And remember, your hinges are made out of cardstock. So I'm using the gray artisan cardstock for my hinges and for finishing my tombstone. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue in this seam line here to just kind of give it some extra strength. And then I'm going to hold up the side, place the seam line right up against the fold line of each hinge. So just put that in there, make a nice corner, and burnish both halves of the hinge. And you will repeat that for the other side. For the top section of the tombstone, you'll need to cut 2 hinges that are 8 inches by 1 inch and scored in the center at a 1/2 inch. So I have mine here, and I've already added my score tape. One will have the tape on the outside where I'm burnishing right now, and the other one has the tape on the inside. So this is our curved piece. If you cut it properly, it will curve. The first hinge that I put down, I did not do notch cutting. It might be easier for you to put this on if you do cut this part of your hinge at least towards the center with a few little slits or notches to make it lay down better in a curve. I was able to get mine to attach into a curve, but you will see that on the other one I will cut it with notches. So go ahead, and in the same manner you're going to put the hinge just on one side, put the chipboard into the cardstock hinge right along the fold line. So you only have your tape backing off of one side right now. So I'm attaching that down and burnish it really well. If you're not cutting the notches in this, then you need to burnish it really well to make sure that it stays down. So I'm just trying to readjust here to make sure that it fits properly along the fold line. Okay, and burnish that. See right there, I had a little bit of fold there in the center. If I had cut a slight notch, it would have been a little bit better, but it's going to be okay because we're going to put this embellishment mousse on it. So don't fret over that. If you've put it on and you have a couple little folds, it will be okay. So just burnish it out really good. And this is where it's going to attach. So definitely you're going to have to cut the notches into the other half. So I've got my smaller scissors, and I apologize, this is kind of off frame here, but I am just starting about 1 inch from each end and cutting these notches. See how you cut notches in? This will help attach it down in the curve. Don't cut into your fold line though, just cut right up to the fold line and cut these notches this way. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up, and you will see it in just a minute how it's all cut out. Go ahead and pull the tape backing off of all the notches and the ends of this particular hinge that's already attached to your top piece. So we're going to peel all these off so that the sticky is exposed. See how you have your curve. So starting at the one end, I have the back of it facing me, so I'm starting on the left side. Either side will work as long as you're getting it attached down. So line it up on the end and press down that hinge. Make sure that the fold line of your hinge, which is also the cut edge of your top chipboard piece, goes on right along the cut edge of the curved piece of the Tombstone box. So you just have to work at it a few notches at a time, sticking them down, and then just curve it all the way around. Press it down with your fingers, and then once it's attached down, then you can go ahead and burnish it with a bone folder. Now the ends are loose right now, but we will put short hinges on those to secure that in place. So I'm just trimming off just a little bit where it's sticking out. If you'll see on one end or the other, you might have a little bit of your hinge sticking out. And if you need to, add a little bit of glue in there like I am, excuse me, to make sure that it does stick down good. Okay, so it looks good to me, and so I think I'll just trim just a tiny bit more. If you have to trim off some of the chipboard to make sure it fits the top piece, it's okay to trim off just a little bit there. Okay, so I've got that lined up the way I want it. To reinforce the top curved piece, we take the other 8-inch hinge, and on this one I am going to cut the notches on both halves, both half-inch sides. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just cutting the notches out on both sections. Do not cut your fold line. You want to be very careful not to cut your fold line, but this will curve in the inside of this curved piece. So once you have it cut, go ahead and take your backing off of both pieces, both sides, both halves. Can get a little tricky taking those off. I should have used a pointy tool, but I'm just doing it with my fingernails, and I don't keep long fingernails. So sometimes it takes me a bit to do that. So I'm going to go ahead, speed this video up while I'm pulling the backing off. I've pulled the backing off of the 8-inch hinge, but I've laid it aside up there at the top, the one that we cut into notches. I've decided to go ahead and reinforce, attach and reinforce the little edges of the top of the box. So I am cutting hinges that measure probably about 1.5 inches. Measure yours to make sure that that is the length you need. You're going to need 4, 2 for the outside, 2 for the inside. These are 1 inch wide, scored it down the middle at 1/2 inch. So I've just cut these real quick. They aren't scored yet, so I'm going to go ahead and score mine. So if you haven't done that yet, cut 4 that are the length of the width of your box there for the top corners. So go ahead and score those and get those ready. And because they are so small, I'm not going to use score tape. I'm just going to use the art glitter glue on mine. So I have these cut. I'm going to go ahead and fold and burnish them so that they're ready to go. Grab your box and pull the little edges together and go ahead and put hinges on the outside first. So I'm putting glue inside the fold line and then on each half of my hinge. This is going to make your box really strong. So go ahead and make sure they're lined up. I know you can't see me right here. I had to bring it in close to me so that I could see. But make sure the fold line of your hinge is right where the two chipboard joins meet. So I'm holding that to make sure it dries for just a second, and then burnish it, and you'll put one on the other side as well. Got that one done. I'm going to go ahead and add some glue here in the seam. And now this is reversed. You want your fold reversed, so you're putting your glue on the outside, and you're going to put one on the inside, line up the fold line along the seam line where the chipboard pieces meet, and then burnish that in. So that reinforces that and also finishes off that seam line. So the left side is finished, reinforced. So now you want to go ahead and do the right side the exact same way. Now that the box is seamed together, we're ready to put that one piece in. We'll go ahead and peel the rest of the backing off. So we're going to put this one on the inside, and we have notched both halves of the hinge. I'm going to put some glue along the seam line, along the curve here on the inside. And this is sticky with the tape on it, so you'll have to work with it, but line it up right where the edge starts on the inside. Put that fold line right into the seam line of the chipboard pieces. And work with a little bit at a time. Work with your little triangles to get it down into the seam and then attached on each side. So I just work it a little bit at a time and work it into that inside seam. And if you have a little hangover there, just go ahead and cut that off. Probably will once you do the notch cutting. It kind of spreads that out and leaves a little bit extra on the end. So make sure all the triangles are attached down good and burnish those in place. Okay, so there's the base of the tombstone. Now we need to add some finishing hinges to the edges. So I have two 6-inch ones for the edge here, right here on the sides, the two front. If they're a little bit too long, then you will trim them off as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the tape backing off of one. I'm going to go ahead and pull both sides off because I'm just going to lay that right over that. I'm going to put glue down the center of the hinge piece and then put the fold line of the hinge right on the cut edge of the chipboard here on the front. So this finishes this edge off. Line it up and burnish it down. I'm going to use my bone folder on the inside and a little bit on the outside and on the edge to burnish this on. Okay, so you see that it does stick out a little bit there on the bottom. I will just trim that off. I'm going to go ahead and put the other one on next. Okay, so maybe I used a longer one on that other side. We'll see. So I'm going to do the same way. I'm going to attach that down. And then once I've done that, I will put one on the bottom edge. That should be where the 6 1/8 inch long one goes. But again, if they're a little bit too long, just trim them off. Put them on the same way. And then the edge of the curved piece at the top, you will take an 8-inch hinge, another 8-inch hinge. You will notch cut it on both halves and attach it down along the edge, front edge there of that curved piece. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up to save some time in this tutorial. And so go ahead and finish your edges. You will also want to finish the bottom edge and the two short edges on the bottom. So we're finishing all the edges right now. It gives it more strength there on the edge, and then we will make our base. So we finished up all the raw edges of our tombstone box by adding finishing hinges to fit, and now we're ready to make the base. So take your 3 chipboard pieces that you cut to 2 3/4 inches wide by 7 inches. You're going to glue all 3 together to make an extra thicker base for this tombstone. So I'm just gluing the 3 pieces together, and then we're going to wrap it in gray cardstock. So I've got the 3, line them up on each end and side to side, and then let those dry. And while they're drying, go ahead and get your cardstock ready, piece cut. And I did not write that down, but I have it in video here. I'll show you with my ruler the size that I cut. So this is how it's going to attach down. But first we need to wrap it. Now, I don't know why, but I determined in the first one that I made that it was better to have it flush on the front side so that the door opens good, and have an extra lip on the back side to balance it so that it stands up. So that's how I'm going to have you attach this one. So I've got my piece of cardstock, and it measures 9 inches long by 4.5. So cut one piece 9 inches by 4.5 of cardstock, and we're going to wrap this base piece. So go ahead and put glue on one side. Center it onto that piece of cardstock. You want about 3/4 to an inch on all 4 sides of cardstock. And then you're going to fold it up. Get your fold line on all 4 sides so that you have the marks for the corners. Take your scissors and cut out the 4 corners on the cardstock only. Cut along the fold lines. Don't cut too far into the point. You want to be able to wrap this and have the corners covered. So I'm folding it up again to make sure it's got a good fold. And I'm going to attach the long sides first, but before I do that, I'm just folding and doing a slight angle cut. Be careful and don't cut away too much. And you want to put your scissors at the base of the cut up against the chipboard. use your score tape or art glitter glue. I'm using the art glitter glue to attach the cardstock down onto the chipboard, wrapping the edges. Fold it over, burnish it down really well to make sure it sticks. And I'm just going to burnish the edge there because this is wider than your normal, so you want to make sure that it attaches down, and that's why I'm putting glue into the fold line right along the chipboard there, the thick edge, and then adding it to the cardstock to attach it down. So go ahead and wrap this piece, doing the ends the same way that you're doing the sides. Next, measure your base piece and cut a piece of cardstock to cover the opposite side, the side that's uncovered. That should be probably about 2 and just 1/8 of an inch, not 1/8 of an inch, but 1/16 of an inch under. So 6 7/8 by the 2 5/8 or so. So just measure that and then glue that down. So you don't want it the exact size of the piece, but you do want it almost all the size. So cut a piece to fit and glue that down on the unfinished side of your base. Okay, so now we're ready to attach the Tombstone box to the base. So take some more hinges that you've cut to fit. These should be the width of the Tombstone box, so that should be about 6 inches. Measure those to make sure. And I've added the tape and scored these in half so that the tape goes to the inside. To the outside, to the outside of the hinge. So go ahead and place it where you want it. There should be a little space on each end of the base, and then you want it flush on the front side where the opening of the Tombstone is. So I am adding a little glue down the seam line here of the hinge. I'm working with one at a time. I pull the backing off of both halves, and I'm going to reach inside here and place the fold line of the hinge right along the bottom seam of the Tombstone on the inside. I can't show you this with this view because I've got to keep it up straight so that I can get it in. There you can see where it's in there. Now you're going to turn it around and you're going to put another one on the back side along the seam line of the Tombstone. Whoops, don't hold on to it so it doesn't fall over. Peel your backing off, add your glue. I'm going to put the glue on the actual seam line of the Tombstone here. Go ahead and put the fold in so that the sticky sides of the hinge attach to the base and to the Tombstone. And I know that you have these little 1/2 inch pieces here that show, but when we add our Nouveau embellishment mousse, you won't notice the seam line or the line of the hinge. And also you'll be adding cobwebs and different elements. So this is real important though to have it so that it is strong here on the side. So this is attached on the inside and on the outside. So go ahead and burnish that fold line. And then you're going to need to put 2 short ones on each side, one on the inside and one on the outside, to also strengthen this and make sure that it's attached to the base really well. So now we're going to do that on the inside. We're going to cut 4 little hinges, 4 more. They should be about just under 1.5 inches long. So you'll need to measure those, possibly trim them down to fit, because they're going to go on the outside and on the inside of this. So I'm measuring mine, and it looks like just under an inch and a half because the box was an inch and a half, and so we want these to be just a little bit, especially the inside ones will be a little bit shorter. So go ahead and cut your hinges the same as you did before, and you can either use tape or glue, and these will be scored down the middle at a 1/2 inch. So I'm cutting 4 of these, and then I'm going to attach them to the base and to the box. Our box base is assembled, and now we're ready to add the pattern, not pattern paper, but gray cardstock to all the outside areas that are uncovered. So that means the top here and the back side and the sides. This is all going to be covered with gray cardstock. Only the inside will have patterned papers. So we're going to go ahead and measure and cut papers for that. So for the top edge and the sides, where it was at 1.5 inches wide, I'm going to cut mine to about 1 3/8 inches wide and cut it the length that it needs to be. So the sides are 6 inches and the top is about 8 inches, but probably cut it like 7 7/8 to start with, and you may need to trim it down to fit. So this is the top. What I do is I cut the 12-inch, and then I'm going to lay it on the top here, and then get me a crease or a fold line where it's going to stop, and then that's where I will cut it. I will just cut it with my scissors or the trimmer. So I'm cutting the other 2 pieces at 6 inches each. So that's just one long 12-inch piece. Cut that down at the 1 3/8, and then cut that piece down to 6 inches each. So that's how we're going to pattern that. And then for the back of the box, we're going to take the template that we cut before, and we're going to trim it down about 1/8 of an inch all around the edges, the 2 sides, the bottom and the curve, to get us a new pattern for our patterned paper and for our cardstock for the inside of the box and for the outside. So go ahead and cut all your papers, and then you will go ahead and glue these on. Trim with your scissors if they're too long, and finish all the outer edges, just the outside back of the box and the 2 sides and the top at this point. I decided to cut a new piece of the gray cardstock to fit on the base on the inside to cover up the seams where we attach the box to the base, to the stand. So I just measured and cut out another piece to fit in there, and I'm just going to glue that down on top of and over all the hinge pieces that are holding down the tombstone. So it's going to cover it there. So I'm just going to use glue and cover that real quick. I want to make sure that's a solid piece, even though I'm going to put some embellishment mousse on it. I still wanted it kind of smooth inside there, and I didn't want anything to get hung. When we start putting in a little mini album, I didn't want any seam edges to hang up on. Okay, so I'm going to use this spider web pattern paper for the inside of my tombstone box. You can choose whichever pattern paper you want to use. I just like the way the spider webs looked, and I'm going to save this little strip here in case I want that saying, though it is printed on some of the cut aparts. So you do need to cut this smaller to go inside this back section, and then you also need to measure and pattern the sides of the inside. So I'm just taking my ruler and I'm going to see how long, probably about 5 7/8 by 1 3/8, I'm guessing. Here I can't see the ruler really well on the camera, but that's what I'm going to cut. So you measure and cut yours to fit. So you need 2 for the sides, the left and right side on the inside of the tombstone box. And then you're going to need 1 long piece for the upper part. And so I would probably cut that about 7 7/8 inches long by the 1 3/8 inches wide. So these I'm getting ready for the sides. And I'm just going to dry fit to make sure. If it needs trimmed down a little bit more, then you would do that before you glue. So you want to make sure that if it's too wide that you trim it down a little bit. So you might have to trim another 1/8 of an inch off. And again, dry fit. And then when it fits good, then go ahead and ink it and glue it inside. For the back section, you will need to make trim your template down to fit that into the top of the back section. So here I'm going to go ahead and ink all these pieces and get them glued into the inside of the box. So here I have cut the piece for the top, the curved piece top on the inside, and I'm just applying the glue. And you should be able to just gently curve that in there and cover that section. And I'm also using the spider web pattern. So go ahead and get that in and just kind of burnish it in with your hands. So I did a lot of dry fitting for this piece in the earlier clip to get it to fit correctly. So that's why you're not seeing that right now. So I'd already done that. So now I'm just repositioning and making sure it's stuck down really good, nothing sticking out over the edges. So you really don't see this piece unless you stand on your head, but of course you want it patterned to make sure that it's finished all along the sides in there. So okay, now we're ready to do this back section with the arch. And I lost my white piece of paper template. It's here somewhere underneath all my stuff. So I just took the door piece. I know that it's bigger than what I need, but I'm going to use it to trace the shape. So on the back side of the spider web, I'm tracing the shape, and then you will see that I will cut it smaller to the inside of the line that I drew. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this down on the right side with my trimmer. Then I'm going to use the scissors to trim the smaller size, dry fit it inside of your box before gluing it in. We have our Tombstone box base assembled and papered on the inside and the outside, and we're ready to create the door, which we'll do in video number 2. So check back for that tutorial. I have it up as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure you shop at countrycraftcreations.com. Thanks. Bye-bye.